Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing okay. Now, today we are doing a video, and I'm not going to lie to you, it is a bit of a long one, but it is an extremely informative one. I have today, I recorded it last night, the leader of the Imperium Coalition, Asher Elias, with us, and we're going to be asking him some questions about his opinions on on his view on Eve, on some certain things that have been going on in Eve, and what it's like to be the leader of one of the largest groups in the entire game. So I hope you enjoy this, guys. He took some time out of a very busy schedule at the minute with the war and everything going on. So really, really appreciate him actually helping out with it and doing this for me. But it was really good to get an insight because there's been a lot of comments about what makes a null sec system region good. Things like what what it's genuinely like, what leaders have to manage, what it's like to be in Goonswarm, what it means to be in Goonswarm and the Imperium. So I hope you enjoy this one, guys. Make sure you watch it all because there's a lot of really good information in there. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy it, guys, and I'll let it play out now. Right. So just for the viewers, would you like to introduce yourself for me, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm Asher Elias. I am the head of Goons Federation and the Imperium.
Perfect. And what, as the leader of the Imperium, what would your job usually entail?
I shake a lot of hands and kiss a lot of babies. It's my job is to make as many people happy as possible, and whatever way that happens. So, I tell our guys in leadership that we serve downwards. We serve line members, but I have to deal with corp CEOs, alliance executors. All these people have desires, and it's my job to make those desires fulfilled as possible while still accomplishing the goal of the average line member.
Yeah. Okay. So so you kind of having to appease the wider coalition, but also the directors as well, to trying to strategically get everything in place, as well as looking after line members and whatnot.
Uh, my number one job is to get us fights and then help us win them, right? That's our number one goal is war, right?
Yeah.
So everything services that. But, I need to have executors happy because they feel like they're in a good place, their alliance is in a good place. I need to have corp CEOs happy because feel like we're moving in the right direction. I need to have directors happy because they feel like their work is valuable and useful. All this stuff needs to be pushed in one direction, and it's easy to get lost in the sauce. People want to, the guy who's in charge of PI or whatever. He's thinking about PI, and so you have to worry about people who only look at uh, nails and everything. They want to hammer everything, right? Um, so yeah, so like I said, it's a lot of I wouldn't say politicking, but it's making people feel valued, and then it's moving them in the direction that is our overall goal. So it's a very political job and a very personal one.
Yeah. Sounds it does sound like a lot of work though, but I mean, when you enjoy
Yeah,
it, if you enjoy something, it's never really work, is it?
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't actually say that this is like the world's most enjoyable job for me, but I'd say I find value and importance in it.
Yeah.
So that's where I get my motivation out of.
Cool. Well, that actually does kind of segue into the next one. So, what was being the biggest struggle of moving into position of coalition leader?
Um, well, let me think about that for a second.
That's fine. It's not one. I suppose it's not one that you just instantly have right there, do you? Unless it was a
Yeah, well, I mean,
traumatic sort of
I had some
experience.
personal struggles that overlapped with it. So it was sort of, I lost a family member right after I started, so it was personally a very low time for me. And then there were all the kind of things that came after it. There were people who were a fan of Mittens who would sort of lever that against me because for whatever reason, I don't know.
Mhm.
So it was actually a pretty low time for me personally. And I don't really think the challenge it's hard to say, was that the biggest challenge or was that my personal life bleeding into my Eve life?
Yeah.
So I think from strictly an Eve perspective, it was financial. It was that Goons Federation had this reputation as being an incredibly rich, powerful empire, And when I took over, we were not that. Some of that was game design, but some of that was just our internal. I think we hadn't kept it up as well as we could have after World War B, and we
Y-
were in a lot of debt. So I think I started running, and I don't want to take credit here because this is a full team effort, but we started running, Goons as a bank, right? We started saving money, investing money, and that has directly led to today, where we feel confident that we can push forward, that we can attack. In my State of the Union, I referenced that the enemy had this information because they had a person who was leaking, this to them. They knew our financial situation and they didn't attack. They just sort of sat on it. So I think you can draw inferences from that. Either they're poor or they are cowardly. Those are
Yeah,
the two main inferences you can draw. That's what I say, right? And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
and I don't think they're poor. I don't believe they're poor.
No.
So
Well,
that's why I
they've
said what I
spent
said for the State
how
of the
many
Union.
years crabbing, and that when they could
Yeah.
have been kicking us went hard while we were down.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you could say they're chivalrous. I guess that's the other conclusion, but I don't think they're that either. so
Yeah, probably not. No.
so that's why I came out pretty hard in my State of the Union, but I feel confident in saying it because of those reasons.
Yeah,
We know what we know, and we know what they knew. So you can look at that and you can draw your own conclusions, but I don't think there's a ton of conclusions to draw other than the ones I just laid out.
yeah. I mean, from a line member point of view, World War B was quite hard on the line members. I mean, we obviously had good morale, but it was quite hard watching all of our space, all of our structures burn, and then being confined to
Absolutely.
that one constellation. But I mean, I think we took the whole region back within. Well, it was record time. It was something ridiculous, like a week that we took the whole region, and I think what the scary part was a lot of people were thinking and saying, if they decide to U-turn and come back round and go for us again, it's going to be really rougher than first time round.
Yeah.
Um,
So are you saying if they'd done this in 2022 or 2023?
yeah. So after we'd rebuilt, we'd rebuilt,
Yes.
we put all our GZs out, we put everything out and started, branching out again. If they then
Right.
come back and hit us again, that would have really been a kicker.
Yeah. Well, let's go back a little further in time. How long have you been playing, by the way?
I've been playing since 2000, early 2009.
Okay, so you have a long history. So you were there for, or at least saw the Casino War
Oh God, yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
2016. Well, you may remember that that test, and especially Pro God Legend, after we went to Delve, they came down to try and stop us. Pro God was like, "This is the time we can crush them. We can destroy them." Like
yeah, yeah,
they've sat in the soda factory, Saranin, the quaif
yeah.
factory that we lived in. They sat there for a long time, and we can't let them back in the nullsec, or else they will regrow. And credit to Pro God, he was absolutely
He
right.
wasn't wrong.
And I remember very clearly, we were in one SMEB, which is the system that like borders SOCT
Yeah,
in Delve, and we anchored a Fortizar, and there were like hoots and hollers and cheers. Like the entire alliance was there. We anchored a Fortizar, and everyone cheered. Like like we drop Fortizars today. We don't even guard them on lining. It doesn't,
I know.
it's
Yeah,
nothing, right? And so, but that was a big deal to us. So ProGod followed us down, and then these guys just can't help themselves. Like Horde, when they were less, not there was very very young at the time, and PL and NC attacked Test Space up in Tribute, and they backstabbed them. And so ProGod and their offensive had to stop. They went home to try and defend it, and that's what pushed them into the south, which has ended up them being neighbors to us as a legacy.
I was just
But
thinking. Imagine if PL and NC didn't attack.
yeah, I mean, would we have able to even establish ourselves in Delve? Who knows? Like, I don't know, but it certainly is like there's a long history of this and a long
Yeah,
history of them like of these guys shooting themselves in the foot.
yeah. It's I'm not sure why, but I don't like. I've always said, like, on streams, on videos, I've always said it is not it is not on the opposite side. It's not the line members that I have the issue with, or are the ones that are causing the issues. It is the mismanagement at the top level that's causing all the problems in their alliances, and it's not just one alliance. It's more like a coalition wide. and I don't understand
Mm.
how they are managing to trip themselves up over and over. But you know,
I
it
think
benefits
that
us.
pe- people have internally consistent decisions usually, right? Like they believe that this is the right decision. You know, it's sort of like people aren't villains in their own stories. They're also not dumb in their own stories, right?
Yeah, yeah, true.
There's there's some reason for it. We just don't understand it. I think that's a lot of like being a good leader is trying to put yourself in their shoes and figure out why are they doing things the way they're doing. Um, and there's a lot of things that people don't consider. Like, you know, for instance, imagine you are the leader of a nullsec alliance, and in your day-to-day life, you're not very outgoing, or you're not very gregarious. You don't have a lot of friends. You're just sort of a meek person. But in
Mm,
the world of EVE Online, you're a big deal. Well,
yeah,
if that's a big part of your identity, then you do not want to lose that, right? Like losing
no,
that would be a
100% not.
blow to your identity. Like and identity is very important. So if you have nothing outside the game and your identity is so wrapped up with your who you are and your air quotes power in the game, then you would make decisions so that you always maintain that power because it's so important to who you are. And so that would warp your perspective and it would make you do things that we wouldn't understand. Like that's just a suggestion for something for some reason why things that wouldn't make sense from an outside perspective would make sense internally to someone.
Yeah. So like, you'd get to, I suppose you would get to the point where, yeah, if you're at the top, it doesn't matter who you tread on to stay at the top. You will to
Yeah,
maintain power.
and you know to us that might seem like silly like why you know it's just Eve, right? Like but for them it's like someone treating them as a superior, you know, someone, you know, sucking up to them because they want a space job, right? Like these things
Yeah, yeah,
could be really important to that person. So
yep,
what I'm saying is like when you're evaluating executor actions for alliances and coalitions, you need to not only look at the you know what's on the ground and the war material and all that stuff, you also need to look at the personal stuff that is harder to tell, and that is more reading tea leaves.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Here's a good one. What is your
Hmm.
fondest memory in Eve Online?
Ooh, okay. I would say I have two. So from an FC perspective, there have been some fights where you're just perfectly in the pocket in the zone, and you're it's like conducting a perfect symphony, right?
Hmm.
You are just in such command of your faculties and everyone is working in sync with you and you just reach this sort of like runner's high or zen moment. It's hard to describe. People have experienced in other ways, but
No,
that
I
kind of
can
feeling.
kind of imagine where it's like the stars are
Yeah.
aligned, everything's working like a well-oiled machine, and
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
And you chase that. You start chasing that dragon for sure.
yeah, yeah.
So I would say from an FC perspective, from like a larger coordinating perspective, probably Operation Enho when we
Oh yeah,
BFG'd the supers. You know, it didn't work because of a bug, but it was such a perfect execution that you know if that bug hadn't happened, it wiped out an entire super fleet.
yeah.
And
It set them back to the
we spent
Stone Age.
yes. So I was talking. It's funny because it's on my mind because someone asked me to tell the story about that while I was doing a fleet yesterday, and I told the story, and then a guy in my fleet was like, "Oh yeah, I was in test at the time. I was sitting in a super that jumped into that." And he's like, "Yeah, Billy." He's like, "Billy told us we're all gonna die. We will find a way to SRP you somehow." That's what he said to the fleet. And so,
I mean, at least he was
uh,
honest, right?
yeah. So that was, but it was really funny because like I ended up telling several stories, and there were a bunch of people who were on my fleet who had been on other sides during previous wars.
Yeah,
Um, and you know, there have been they're telling me what kind of experiences they've had, and it's very interesting.
yeah. That's one thing that a lot of people share with a lot of people share with each other is the fleets. It's always the fleets that you end up on, whether you end up sitting there chilling, chatting, and sharing stories, or you absolutely decimate an enemy fleet in a spectacular way.
I would say
That
as an FC and as a leader, I did a fleet recently where we like literally guarded some jump bridges, and we shot like we probably ended up killing like one ship that just was unlucky to come into us. Right, there was no battle, and at the end of the fleet, some guy said, "This is the most fun fleet I've ever been on," and that is really heartening as someone who is doing the fleet because it's easy to enjoy a fleet with a mega fight, right? That's a low bar. But when your fleet doesn't get that fight and someone feels like this is the most fun they've had because
yeah,
you were able to contribute to making it entertaining, that means you're really succeeding.
yeah. You're essentially winning there, aren't you?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
tell my FCs, and this is something I've always lived by, is that your fleet and each fleet is a audition for the next one. There is always, especially in a group as big as Goons, there is always someone new on your fleet who has never been on it before. Some guy was in my fleet yesterday, and he said he'd been here for either 5 months or 15 months, a pretty long time. He's like, "This is my first fleet with you as an FC," and so every fleet you do is an audition for them to come back to your next one. So you can never get complacent. I've
no,
done probably more fleets than almost any other FC in this game. I'm certainly in like the top five, I would guess. Um,
probably.
but you can never look at it and be like, yeah, I'm Asher Elias, well known 23rd best FC. Like you have to each time you have to be auditioning for that new person so that they enjoy your fleet and want to come back to the next one.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because if you do a really boring fleet and nothing happens, or you make really bad calls, and some people might not just come back to your fleets again.
Oh, absolutely. People vote with their feet.
Yeah, definitely. Let's have a look. I've got a note here about the Cultural Revolution because I've seen so many comments about goons never change. Goons are always the shitters that they were 10, 15 years ago. They're all toxic, they're all scammers, and this, that, and the other. And we have gone through a cultural revolution over the last few years where
See?
it's changing it's changing the attitude of goons. That's
Yeah. First
uh,
off, let me encourage you. Don't sit there and read those comments. There are people who will never because they are incentivized. There is direct incentive to make your organization look bad, scummy, and terrible because
yeah,
they're trying to recruit the same people that you are. So these people will never give you credit for anything you do. It is more like politics in EVE Online than it is like war, right?
yeah.
Um, they say all wars are political. Well, EVE Online, most war is political. And so these people are incentivized to never admit that you are improved, to always say that you're the worst. So you need to look at what independent people are saying about you and take that to heart. But when someone has some sort of incentive to degrade you, you need to not take that to heart. That's important as part
Yeah,
of being part of Eve.
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, we have gone through a cultural revolution. In fact, like we probably went too far in like 2023 where we were getting a little bit into the the state of the time where we were going probably too much on shutting down um, people expressing themselves in any way where it wasn't orthodox. So it actually it's a hard balancing act because we basically just don't allow political discussion. The reason
Yeah,
being is that we have people from I don't remember what the last survey said, but I think it was like 120 countries or something, a lot of countries. Um,
that's a lot of countries. That
yeah,
is a
and there's
lot of
no
countries.
yes, there is no political discussion that you can have that won't upset someone. And in the end, Eve for most people is a distraction and an enjoyment, and they really don't want to bring real life politics into it. Especially when you might have a guy like a Ukrainian and a Russian are both on a fleet, right? There's just there's
Oh, I
nothing
know.
that
Yeah,
those two people can agree on. And
yeah,
so and there's also some subset of people who are so certain that anyone who disagrees with them is an evil person. So
yeah,
it's better to just nip that in the bud
yeah,
and just up political debate. And I have people who come at me fairly frequently because they're like it's the crusader type. Every place that they
yeah,
go needs to be about whatever their issue is. And if you have a Chinese person and an American and a French person, and a Russian and a Saudi Arabian, right? They're just not going to agree. So what
yeah.
what we
Exactly.
do is just cut out political discussion, period. And I think it leads to a much friendlier place. And we insist on respect for people, and it's pretty simple. We're probably a little heavy-handed on it, but that's a reaction to our past where we were too light on it. So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah, pretty
balancing act,
much.
and it's
Yeah,
something I think about a lot.
yeah. So
Luckily, like wartime kind of solves all ills, right? When you give everyone a goal, they stop sniping at each other and start sniping at the enemy.
yeah, exactly. And like people actually get to know each other more because they're always in fleets together and they always say hi to each other. You just sort of build friends in war. You might be gate camping with some. You might decide to go, I don't know, go roam into someone's space with someone that you never met. And you start talking, you make friends, and war's actually good.
Hmm.
I've always said war is really good for Eve.
Mm.
Right. Uh, I don't know if this is going to come under future plans, so obviously feel free to say no. But what are your goals for the Imperium over the next 3 years?
Yeah, that's a question that is certainly so. 3 years is too far to plan ahead. I plan ahead in great detail for weeks. Heavy detail for a month, general detail for 3 months, and broad strokes for 6 months. And that's probably about what you can do for Eve. Now, I saw us where we are right now, maybe a year and a half ago. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing where you can, and certainly when you're looking at like financial restructuring and debt, you can look even further. But, saying what the structure of Eve is going to be like in 3 years,
Yeah,
not only do people change, but essentially we have a god who is capricious, and that's CCP. They can change whatever they want, and it moves the ground out from under you. Like imagine if gravity was halved randomly on Earth. It'd be hard to make
yeah.
plans, right?
I,
So,
I know,
but
right?
that can
Yeah,
very easily happen in Eve Online.
yeah. I mean, I suppose, I mean, with that, it's like you are completely at mercy of CCP not drastically turning a dial somewhere and changing, how nullsec even functions as a whole.
And we've heard that they're looking at Solve right now. So, you know, that could happen next
It
week, next
could
month,
remove
next
Fussy.
year. I mean, yeah, I think it's where we're headed, right? So
I
that
hope
seems to be
so.
what they're indicating. So, they say, um, if you want to make God laugh, make a plan. That's
Yeah.
kind of what's going on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, that's a good one
So we
actually.
we
Yeah.
plan for we plan for the short term and the medium term
Yeah.
a lot more than the
Okay.
long term.
Got you. Um what advice would you give potential new residents of Del Aquarius Imperial basis?
It's a good question. Hmm.
Because it's not as
I
defensible as it was before Equinox.
I wouldn't give them military advice. Like I generally I only give a couple people military advice because I know they can execute it, or I know they have people who can. I don't. There's many roads lead to Rome in Eve Online,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I wouldn't say, well, you should apply a Dominic's doctrine or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I- In Eve, the power are people, right? I'm an FC at heart, and I love fighting, but if you show up with 1,000 more people than me, I will lose, right? That's just the way
Yeah.
it goes. Um, so my advice to anyone would be, conduct yourself in a way that keeps your people happy. Don't get too full of yourself as a leader, and remember that you serve the line members. And if you keep those things in mind, you'll probably have success as a leader in EVE Online. The bar is actually relatively low. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's not that hard, but it does require consistency and a certain temperament.
Yeah. And just I think as just making sure just remembering always remembering that don't be that self-serving leader. As you say,
I
like
tell
you're there
Yeah,
for the members.
when I promote someone, I say you're not being elevated, you're being made to serve, right? Like
Yeah.
your job is to serve the line members. I think a lot of people are not used to that kind of language. It's almost like, well, that's interesting. Like I've never heard that before in this
Mm.
context. It almost sounds religious, right?
It does
But
a little bit, yeah, a little bit.
but but it's true. Like we're not paid for this job. This is all volunteer, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Like, what is your goal? And the reason I put it in that way is because if your goal is to be like, oh, I'm an important space person, you are wrong for the job.
Mm,
It's like
yeah,
I have like a theory that the United States president would be better served if it was someone who didn't want to be president than someone who did. And I feel that way about this kind of thing where we try to pick people who are active, who show, um, interest. But if someone came and said, "Hey, I want to be a director," it would really lower the odds of them becoming one.
yeah.
We sort of we sort of force promote people and then explain the job to them, right?
Yeah,
So
I do enjoy seeing those pings. Like, congratulations, they've been
yeah,
promoted. I'm like, what?
yeah, exactly. So keep your eye out for one of those coming out maybe in the next 5 minutes while we're talking.
Let
Um,
me just get my pings open.
yeah. So
um,
um, yeah, but the really important thing is that your job as a leader in EVE Online in any capacity is to make the life of the people below you easier, happier, and more fun. And so if that is not the reason you're there, then you're there for the wrong reason. I don't want anyone who wants to be like a church lady with a little tiny empire of power that they lord over other people because they
yeah,
don't have
yeah,
it anywhere else. Like I'm very sensitive to that. So I use this kind of language very, very specifically because I believe it. And I believe that I've seen a lot of the wrong people get roles in EVE Online and start baby raging at people below them. And it is embarrassing to them and everyone else, but mostly to them.
yeah. You don't want one of those. You don't want someone with an attitude of "I'm holier than thou" sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like, let's remember we're playing a spaceship video game in the
Yeah,
end here,
it's
guys.
space pixels, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And but that's why I talk about service because I think it's very important, actually. Like, I think what we're doing is important. Like, I know it's important because I get those messages from people who say, like, hey, you know, a year or two ago, I was in like a really dark place, and I was thinking about some stuff that is, really shouldn't have been thinking about. And one really important part was like the friends I made in Goons, the people I knew, and now I'm feeling a lot better about life and where I am. And like,
Yeah,
I get a message like that, relatively frequently, and I know there are people who are there who don't message me, and or sometimes they tell me like 10 years after, right? That's when they
yeah,
can actually talk about it. And then there's ones that are not so drastic, but it's an important part of their life and identity once again. And so I like to minimize the importance of being in power, but not the importance of what we're doing, because I really do believe in that.
yeah, 100%. Um, one about that I've got to talk about that fight last night. Um, um, I was sat there and streaming that initiative and snuff with friends versus fraternity and
Yes.
friends.
Yeah.
I mean, from your point of view, what
Yeah.
sort of objective do you think fraternity were trying to achieve? They have pinged out saying that they committed.
Shout out to Norris, dude. He's just being a gamer.
Yeah,
Like, absolutely.
I mean,
Um,
I was sat there saying to everyone on stream like, "There's no objective," but they know they're going to lose this fight. But and I went on a little tangent because there was someone from Horde in stream, shitting it up,
yeah.
and I said, look at the fraternity here. They know they're going to lose. They are going to lose in a spectacular way, but their leadership have decided let their line members fight. Let them have cat fights. There's not many cat
Yeah.
fights going on, so let them do it. And Horde leadership have denied that all this war, but fraternity have thought, you know what, we're going to go and have fun.
Yeah. I yeah, I literally, I honestly, I don't think there's anything but Norris being a gamer. I don't think there's any other explanation, and nor does it need to be one. Like, not everything is Machiavellian, right? It's just like we're gonna go have a fight. You guys are up at 4 a.m. China time or whatever it was, like their worst time zone, and let's go in there and let's brawl. And I don't think there's going to be like 2% of his members who are going to complain about it, and 98% are going to be like, yeah, let's do that again. That was awesome, right?
Yeah,
Um, and the problem is those 2% are almost always squeaky. Like, they will make a lot of noise
yeah,
and they will pull down the morale of other line members. So, and they're very hard to deal with because if someone's complaining about it and you silence them in some way, they will immediately be like, look at this, they can't handle the truth, right? They want to shut me up.
yeah,
But if you just let them run around and be Grima Wormtongue, they will lower the resolve of people who would otherwise have enjoyed that fight by their negativity. So it's a really vexing issue as a leader, how to deal with that kind of person.
Yeah.
and it stops you from doing those kind of things because you don't want that insidious, nature that in some people just have it. Either it's intentional, but most of the time it's genuine. They're just genuinely lemons, right?
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
but but yeah, I think, like I said, I think Norris being a gamer and going hard, and I was in our leadership channels, we've seen an uptick in everyone around space like going into fights, and I'm like, dude, I think we've started the ball rolling a little bit here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Sniper Eagle One was like, he was giving me a little grief about taking credit for that. And then Norris went in like that, and I'm like, I see, see, it's spreading, it's spreading. So
But no, I
anyway,
thought it was amazing. Just there's no objective. It's a 30 billion S40s are, but you know what? 3 trillion in dreadnoughts dead. Um, that's insane. Just for because let's go and have fun, and you don't see that very often. But every line member in that in those fleets will be talking about that fight for a while.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, we we want to have more fights like that. That's why I keep saying we're not done. We'll be pushing forward. There is something about low sec that allows that kind of fight to develop more naturally. In null sec, like the escalation chain starts off smaller, and I mean in ship size, right?
Yeah,
You can't just go straight to dreads in nullsec, so our fights play out differently. But our fights are also a lot more committed than a nullsec fight because in a low sec fight, in low sec you can basically just leave whenever you want,
yeah,
and in nullsec, once you're in 150 kilometers of bubbles and you aren't going anywhere,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
you have to. If you watch that fight over the Fortizar, the second one that they, got pounded on, we had their rogue fleet in like in a ton of bubbles, and when
Oh
they
yeah, yeah.
withdrew they had to just leave the whole rogue fleet behind, and it got massacred.
Oh yeah.
So
I
like
was on
that's
that fleet, and I was
yeah,
just like, yep, they've just left three-quarters of the guys there.
yeah, so yeah, it's definitely an issue that doesn't show up in low sec as much because there's less commitment in low sec.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I've had this question asked as well. What do you, in your opinion, what would make a nullsec region? I've put here good, but valuable these days, like a sought after region.
I mean, the best space in the game is drone lands by far because there's no NPC space anywhere near it, right?
Yeah,
As far as like looking at it as a prosperity generation area, it's drone lands. And the other thing is being extremely dense. So where goons are moving to in CTAC J is an extremely dense region, not as dense as drone lands, but pretty much the second densest area. Um, we do have NPC space near us, but not as close as it was before. But also, it lacks really long light year gaps, which is what the problem was with Delve, Quirius, and Period Basis, is that they've got these huge smugglers gates that divide them, and so it was like this really gross light year gap in our layout
yeah,
that we just had to move across eventually,
yeah,
and so we're doing that right now. And it's going to be one of those things where, although we're honestly we're evacing so much stuff, like yesterday, I don't remember the exact number, but I believe our freight service shipped 2 trillion in collateral of stuff just yesterday. That
Oh
was
my God.
yesterday's load.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
this.
think I was watching them bridge freighters, and I think the D scan at the time, this was regular freighters, not jump
Yeah.
freighters. They were bridging 128 freighters off of
Oh,
Titan.
bloody hell.
So that was yesterday's load. So everyone talked about the Great Skylift when we moved ourselves, but there's a second Skylift going on right now, and it's going on very successfully. And Goons are in Delve along with Sigma, Shadow, Fnatic Legion, and a few others. Uh, you know, Fighting and trying to defend these unanchors. And so far, I mean, it's not been 100% at stopping them from stopping unanchors, but it's gone very well,
Yeah,
all things considered. Considering we basically just said everything there is all the structures there are just gone, and let's just get this over with.
yeah, pretty
Um,
much.
but we'll give it the old college try at
Yeah, hell
uh,
yeah.
at unanchoring what we can, and we're only halfway through it, so But we've done well so far, and we're going to try and keep doing that for the next 3 or 4 days, and we'll get out what we can. Like that's basically, when you put down a structure, it's basically written off at that point. And if we get something out, we get something out. So, but that's been a important part of space is not having those big non-contiguous areas of space in the middle of where you live.
Yeah, because I suppose I mean geography plays a massive role in deciding how good regions are, really, doesn't it? Because if they're spread out massively, like as you say on those smugglers' gates, then it's harder to project around your own home, essentially.
Yeah. Well, it makes natural choke points, which are bad for moving, good for defense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we were looking at all the actual systems we wanted to stay in Innsmother, and can I complain that there are too many I regions? Because I'm always like, is it Innsmother, Immensea,
Yeah,
Impasse?
yeah. There's quite a
Um,
few. There is quite a few,
Apple Pear in
especially in the
particular
south.
cannot. Apple Pear in particular cannot get Immensea and Innsmother separated. He always says the wrong one. But in Innsmother, we were looking at where to put our stager, and CTAC-J is the ancestral home of Goons from 19 years ago. Russians have lived there, and we ended up settling on it. Not only for historical reasons and because there's a monument in that system, but it was just sort of the best system. So over 19 years, the geography has not changed enough to make that not the best system, or at least one of the top three, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Geography is still important and still matters, and the same as it was 19 years ago.
But we chose CTAC-J. Obviously, it's ancestral, but it's got a monument. And let's be honest, we like monuments.
Yeah.
I mean,
Listen,
who
when you're a
does with a
baller, you only
monument?
live in systems that have monuments in them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you gotta
That's
have
just Goon
monuments.
life, baby.
Um, and this is kind of a little bit of a meme, but I'm going to ask it anyway. It says, was this war a feint just to take a new home on Horde's doorstep?
Well, we're calling it the War of the Ruses because there have been several ruses. First off, the Keep Tar,
Yeah,
where we brought in the fake, what was it, a fake avalanche, whatever the fake freighter was,
yeah,
and they destroyed it. And headliner blew his load too early, saying your Keep Tar just died, and it was not. It was the wrong one. Thanks for feeding the dreads. Um, and then we lit the Sino on their fort, two Sinos on their fort, actually, sorry, on their keep when we were anchoring the fort in CTAC-J, and they recalled all their fighters and all their fleets, and we got our fort
Did you see that on the
dropped.
scope video? That got mentioned on the scope video.
Yeah, it was a little opaque for people who don't know the actual reference, but it was still very cool.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
did enjoy that bit.
and then the final ruse was that they really thought we were going to put Brave on their border. And I think they were actually like salivating at it. They thought we were going to
Oh
put
yeah,
Brave at the front. And I think you can tell that ruse was very successful because right after I did the fireside where I announced that we're not leaving, we're staying, and CTAC-J is going to be our new home, you could look on the Horde Discord and you could see all of their top men were saying nothing in any channel for like 2 hours. And so I think it's pretty safe to infer that they went like emergency meeting right now at
yeah,
everyone in the
yeah,
channel, get in comms. We need to discuss our response.
yeah,
Because if they had known, right, like if they had known that that was the case, they would have had, pre-prepared stuff, and they would be chatting with the guys in the general channel, but it
yeah.
was real quiet afterwards. So, so
There's,
I think it's pretty clear that it was immediate at everyone. Holy
oh
shit,
yeah.
Goons! Yeah, like we need to figure out the plan here.
One of the largest supercat fleets in the entire game is now within 5 jumps of our space.
Yeah, or one jump in a gate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we
Um,
do?
no, exactly. I mean, and we still haven't seen them announce a new staging. They're still one gate from our border, and so we'll see. Are they going to stay there? Are they going to go back to MJ? Are they going to go halfway in between? That's going to be like that's the kind of thing that I know your channel will cover, and I love that
Oh
kind of
yeah,
coverage that you're doing. So when they do that, whenever they make that announcement, that'll be really interesting. And if they haven't announced anything, and probably, I would say by the end of the month, you can probably just assume they're going to stay there,
yeah, yeah.
which is something of its own because it's not a great stager for a non-wartime capital.
No.
So
With regards to the war, would because technically, obviously, we have achieved all of our achievement war goals that we wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
And Horde are saying, "Oh yeah, just push into drone lands, push into drone lands." Now, strategically, that's a bit of a nightmare because regional gates, and you have to take multiple keep stars around and stuff like that.
Right.
I can't. I've already done a video and I've talked about will we now be in a permanent state of a war, not an invasion war, but
Yeah.
constantly fleets going out, and even if it's just burning all their space and not obviously not taking SOF, because why would we want to push into drones and take SOF, but just burning everything that they have. Could that be something that you might consider, or do you think just
Are you
conquer like
in Jabber and on Elysium channel right now?
Let me just load it up.
Let me just I'll read it to you. So if you go to Elysium and you have the topic, the saved topic that you can read, which has the information on when the fireside is
Oh
and
yeah,
the recordings and all that. Someone, not me, has put a quote from the fireside last week. And the quote is, "The perma war is here." Asher Elias, 14 June 2025.
Oh yeah, I see
So
that.
the perma war is here is the answer to your question. Now, does that mean that like after we evac out of Delve and move Brave and IGC and Sons of Bane
Yeah.
and DC, does that mean that we are going to next day Hernan Cortez sail our ships across and burn the boats? Probably not. There are things that you have to do these things in order, and you can't let your enemies like dictate how you do things and try to like meme you into a bad decision, because they would love to do that. A lot of leadership at this level is managing expectations of your guys, because the average line member is definitely more influenced by like a Reddit meme than someone who's been around for 15 years. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh
The
yeah,
average
yeah.
line member has been around for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, right? So they don't have like the depth of experience that maybe people in leadership do, and you don't want to assume that they do. You have to explain why that is. And so when they see a bunch of memes on Reddit, like it starts bothering some of them, right? Some of them start getting bothered. So you have to explain why that is, and then don't let that pressure, move you from the things that you know are important. So, I say the perma war is here, and I mean that. We're on their border. We have
Yeah.
shown that even when we were in Delve, we would go through wormholes and attack them. They're not allowed to do that. Like, they aren't allowed to send like an actual fleet over to our space to like brawl. Like, when was the last time you saw a horde fleet in our space in a doctrine that is meant to fight, like to sit there and fight on a grid? I'm serious. Like,
It's been I would honestly say it's been many years, because the only ones you see is that FC that just brings scepters or stabbers, but that is it.
yeah, or tornadoes. There's tornadoes as well.
Yeah, and that they
Um,
haven't sent anything of substance to our space to attack us.
yeah, one of their main FCs that would go out every day joined us, right? And since then, I believe, and I actually don't know that this is true or not, like as far as I don't have this confirmed, but I believe Gobbins has basically told them that they're not allowed to send like a skirmish doctrine into Goon space, like as part of a
In case
we
the
had we
feed.
I once again it's try to analyze from the perspective of sanity and thinking you are a very smart person, and then apply that. And so my guess is I believe that Gobbins had a strategy for a long time to surround Delve, contain us, and then starve us and weaken us that way. Which is why they had that Keepstar and Catch that we initially pushed out, and we dropped the Keepstar next to their Keepstar. As far as I know, it's the first time that's ever happened in Eve. And I was envisioning like an awesome thing. Like, remember how T5ZI 1DQ systems right next to each other was
Yeah,
super
yeah,
cool?
yeah. That
Imagine
is
if you're on
cool.
the same grid.
I
Like,
know. Yeah,
so we dropped the Keepstar on the same grid, being like, this will be awesome. Our guys can literally undock, warp over their Keepstar, and shoot it and just start a fight right there. We could have fighters and send fighters across at each other. Just like when I say the perma war is here, imagine if they had stayed in that Keepstar and fought, but they
oh, I
immediately
know.
ran away. And then
I don't
so,
understand. I've
but
never understood their logic of just
but
turn and
I
run.
believe what the plan was to give Goons no content, and then contain them because they were sort of trying to build like a ring around us. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I'm just reading the same tea leaves that you are, but um, I think that was the plan. And so I think that's why they're not allowed to bring skirmish doctrines over to us. Arcadios goes into their space like every day. Um, we have our budget and we have like, here's the moon costs, right? Here's the fuel cost,
Yeah.
here's the sob cost, and here's the Arcadios SRP bill. Like that's our main budget items, right? So,
Yeah.
but we're happy to pay it. It's not, I'm never like someone tell Arcadios he needs to stop feeding. Like that's never happened once. I love a dude like Arcadios, and when he was on the other side, I hated flying against him because he's such a pest. He's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
annoying. That's why I was
Yeah.
like, I want this dude on my side because I always
Yeah.
considered myself a pest, and I want those pests on my side too. He would never let your fleet go home, just free burn home or go home easily. Like he would just be like, you would beat him, and then you'd be on the way home, and he would drop on the last 10 guys of your fleet. You have to turn around when everyone's tired, and he'd be shooting those 10 guys. You'd be like, dude, just let me leave, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love people like that. That's his spirit, right? So, and I want to get more and more FCs like that. So, um, but I believe that they are not allowed to do something like that. His goal, Gobbin's goal, is to deny us content because he believes that we will break before he does. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the reasoning. I really don't understand that part of it. But I think it's pretty clear at this point. If and there was a horde member who joined recently, and he was just like, "Man, I never, I didn't realize the difference in activity between the two sides. Like when you're on the other side, you only see what they show you, and so, but now that I'm here, it's like the scales fell off his eyes. He's like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I've had quite a lot of horde popping into the comments on the videos, and they've said, you know what, utmost respect to Goons. You've absolutely destroyed that space quicker than any of us expected. You've how efficient you guys are at doing what you do is quite is measurable. He said, I take
it,
me
it-
hat
it's
off to
im-
you.
it's important to remember that the average line member is a line member. They like Eve for fighting and for having fun, and that's what they're here for. And it's the leadership that sets the strategic, plans and rules. And it only takes like 5 people to warp what you're doing. Like you only need 5 really committed people to set an agenda. And so when that guy comes in and says, "Hey, like big credit to you, you guys rolled through the region," it's because they want to be doing the same thing. But
Yeah,
all their buddies are in horde, right? Like it's hard to say like in Eve, it's a lot easier to leave and join another side than it is, like, say, in real life. Like, if you wanted to, defect to Russia or whatever, that would have like real cost to you. Like,
oh
you would
wait, yeah,
lose
yeah,
your family, your friends, your
yeah,
money, your house, whatever, right? Like, there's a real cost to it. Whereas in Eve, you just kind of fly somewhere else, but you still have those friends. You still have those people you
yeah.
made bonds with. So those horde guys, they don't want to feel like they're leaving their friends a lot of the time too. So,
I
but
definitely think Goons have a
they want
better.
what we have. They trust
Yeah,
me. They want what we have.
I
Some of
think
them
Goons have a
no,
better
no, they can't say it.
cohesion.
Yeah, oh,
We,
absolutely. I mean,
we
that's
definitely have better cohesion than them.
undoubtedly. I'm hesitant to make blanket statements sometimes, but with that one, I will say I have no doubt that we have a better
Yeah,
social cohesion than Horde does.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's it is. I mean, I've everyone I've spoken to about being in Goons. Like, I joined Goons. I think seven. I think it was. I looked at it last night. It's like 7 years, 1 month, and some days. And I've said to them all that I can't see myself being anywhere else. It's not so much the PvP that we do. It's not so much the crabbing space that we've
Yeah,
got. It's the people that I've come to meet and know along the way, and we all kind of view the game in the same way, and we all want the same thing, and you just then you feel like a full part of a team, and you don't want to leave that team because you don't want to let your team members down, and everyone thinks the same way. And I've never had that in any other alliance.
I have this quote here. It got sent to me, and I'm moderately hesitant to share it because it's like praising me in particular, and I'm not really into that. But this guy, I've been talking to him recently in the fleet too, and so I don't think he'll mind me sharing at least his words. He's a former Horde member who joined us, and he said the most striking thing to me so far is how available Asher and other alliance leaders are to just casual talk. Spent 3 hours on CAD patrol last night, and it was eye-opening to me on what alliance leaders should be. Something I have never seen before. TBH. I'm used to the reclusive, never undock, never talk type.
Yeah,
So this guy came on board.
like Matani.
Yeah, I mean, Mittens was certainly more available than Gobbins, but yes,
Yeah,
he was definitely more reclusive and uninvolved in the average line member than I am.
yeah,
But like
definitely.
to Mitten's credit, he was the one who started the fireside talks, and that's something that like essentially no other alliance leader does. And I think it's one of the big
Yeah.
differentiators between us and them is that every week you can come and you can ask me a question, and I basically read every question. I every now and again I skip over one that I think is like inappropriate, or it's just
Yeah,
or I'll
yeah.
just
There's
have to be
always
like,
that one guy.
yeah, the person who just probably should not be let out of their padded cell. But but yeah, generally I try to read every question to the annoyance of like a lot of my directorate. By the
Yeah,
way, like they're like Asher, you say too much. Like
yeah, yeah.
they start calling me Ron Burgundy because I read whatever on the teleprompter. Like you know you can skip questions, right? I'm like, yeah, but I don't really like to do that. I want to,
But
so
it's on the teleprompter.
yeah.
I mean, I've covered everything I want to. I think a lot of people are gonna like enjoy hearing, probably a bit more about Goons from um, a leader perspective than they would be able to hear for without actually being in Goons. A lot of alliance leaders don't talk like you have about their own alliance in the same ways that you do. It's all join us, join fleets, make money, and that's it. But for I think what's refreshing about leadership like yourself is as we've just discussed, you're available to talk to people. You have a weekly meeting, and everyone likes to hear, what's going on, kind of behind doors without revealing future plans, but also making sure everyone's up to date with what's going on.
I think just having a meeting where you can ask questions and the person needs to answer you, right then and there without having, 30 minutes or 3 hours to think of a response and then type it out
Yeah,
is important because that's more genuine, right? Like other alliances, you can send a question to the leader or to the leadership, and you will generally get a response eventually. But you know, I think the directness and the immediateness of that are important. I think people can tell when you're bullshitting them. And I do
yeah,
have to bullshit people sometimes. Like, sometimes you just say future plans. Sometimes you have to be like strategically ambiguous, right? And that is, that's always an issue. I cannot tell, like in this interview, I can't tell you anything.
no,
In the fireside, I can't tell you. Sorry, I can't tell you everything. In the fireside, I can't tell you everything, right? Like, it's something you have to balance. But you literally, you just cannot give away those future plans.
that's
But yeah,
one.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, I was just gonna say that's one big thing about Eve, which I do enjoy actually as
A
well.
lot of people
Is
love the
these
spy side of it.
Yeah, it's the psyops. It's the intentional misinformation
Yeah.
to see how they react, and also the intentional misinformation that can also lead to rooting out spies as well. I love it. I really do love
Oh
it.
yeah, we've definitely caught several people
Yeah, I love
that
it.
way. A famous one is from a long time ago. Back in the day, people would just share screenshots of a forum post. Like this was when we were more forum oriented, and when someone would announce an alliance, do an alliance post, someone would share a screenshot of it. So various people started embedding stuff on their forums to let who had done that screenshot.
Yeah,
And I think PL was like the first one who started doing this. They started doing posts where after people stopped doing screenshots because they got caught, they would just copy and paste the text.
yeah,
And so they started doing posts where they would have like substitute words, like instead of attack, it might say offensive or whatever. And each of those words would be scrambled around. They would have the same meaning, but each of those words would be scrambled in each thing that was sent to each player so
oh,
that if that text leaked, you could plug it in and say, well, they had this word, this word, this word, this word, this word, and that means it could only be Bob. So Bob is
yeah,
the spy.
yeah, yeah,
So there's that was like 15 years ago. Like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
some like crazy, technology that's being used to do this. But yeah,
I'd love to talk to Apple about that one day, but I know full well he won't be able to talk about it
Yeah, he
because
won't
otherwise,
tell
you
you
know.
anything. That man's an iron trap.
Yeah,
I
he
have
is.
I have a hard time getting stuff out of him sometimes. I'm like, Apple, you know I'm the alliance leader, right? You report to me. He's like, yes, but I don't want you leaking it. I'm like, all right. Just tell me.
Yeah, he's a great guy,
But
but
anyway,
yeah,
I just want to say,
he's
like,
tough
yeah,
man.
I really enjoy your show, man. I think that doing even news is rough. There's so much fog of war. There's so much like, intentional stuff that we were just talking about where people try to obfuscate it, and you do a great job. So, and you know, you have to read a lot of tea leaves, make a lot of guesses, and you're wrong sometimes, but that's the point, right? But you
Yeah,
get a lot of it right, and it's
yeah.
really helpful because Eve is hard to keep up, especially if you don't have that flow of
So
information.
much changes so fast.
Yeah,
It
so
is
having
hard to
having that
keep up.
information's great. So thank you for doing the program. I mean, and thank you for having me on. It's been a lot of fun hanging
No,
out and talking to you.
I do appreciate the time you've taken out. I know we've been on an hour now, and I know there's a lot going on in your world with Eve and moving and
Back to the front, baby.
oh god, consolidating an entire coalition is not an easy job. But I don't
It's
envy you
not
on that
easy,
one.
but
I'm not gonna
we're
lie.
going places, and that's the important part. You know, we're
But
going places, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and that's what I care about.
yeah, no, I really appreciate it. The time for that. I'm actually looking at getting Norris on soon.
All right, thanks, man.
Um,
Catch you later.
but thank you very much. You take care.